to the podium, live reacting to the charges filed against him.
Citizens of Israel, I've given my life for our country. I fought for it, been injured for it, struggled for it in recent years, internationally, and here as well, to turn us into a global power. Just like that, and I am proud, very proud of our achievements. But I must tell you that this is a really difficult day, and I know it's difficult for a lot of people who support me and love me. And I want to tell you a few things, heart to heart. I respect the law enforcement authorities in Israel. They have rightly global repute. But I think you'd have to be blind not to see that something not good is happening among police investigators and members of the prosecutor's service. Now we are witnessing an attempt at a coup against the Prime Minister with false claims and tendentious, contaminated investigations. You'll have noticed that the Attorney General's decision is being published today at unprecedented speed. I would say at the most sensible timing of the political system since the country was founded. Just as the original suspicion sheet was published just a few weeks before the election, the previous election, at the most sensitive time. I think these facts illustrate just how much this process has been infected by external considerations. It's intended to topple a right-wing government. Me, who, unlike so many my opponents on the left, unlike the conscripted media, want to see a free market, not just in the economy, but a free market of opinions in the media. A prime minister who believes in a strong, big Israel and not in a weak, constricted country that bows its head. But I address today not just my supporters. I am also addressing my political rivals, and I'm speaking to fair political rivals who understand that in order for our country to prosper, to flourish, for our country to exist, there needs to be an unbiased rule of law here. My whole life, I've fought for this country. I've passed difficult battles. I've got used to paying serious prices. But what happened in this contaminated process of investigations, a process that included cases that were completely stitched up, the creation of new pieces of evidence, this process, I can tell you, I hear these things. It shocks not only me, it shocks masses of citizens in Israel. And again, not just on the right of the map. Because this contaminated process raises serious questions about public trust in police investigations and also the work of the prosecutor service. You know, it's been checked that the public has lost faith in them. And rightly so. This is a process of erosion that started years ago, when Ruvi Rivlin's term as Justice Minister was foiled and Raful Eitan was foiled from being Police Minister, when Gal Hirsch's candidacy for the police to be police commissioner was foiled, when they whitewashed the serious case against prosecutor Ruth David, who received expensive gifts in exchange for her intervention in the cases of people who gave her the gifts. When they foil Ila Gerstein, who said, the judge said that the prosecutor service is sick and that the person who heads it Shai Nitzan is not fit to fulfill that role. These aren't just problems. It's a system. It's a contaminated process, and we must end it. I know any criticism we say, people say, how do you dare to say this? You're injuring the rule of law. When there's such a series, and I'll elaborate soon, you should demand, you should be the ones to demand that the investigators be investigated. Because it's time for the public to receive clear answers in all these cases. And in the case of the contaminated investigations against me, in this contaminated process, they didn't look for the truth. They were after me. The investigators were not pressuring the witnesses to say the truth. They squashed them to make them lie. What the investigators wanted to hear, know what really happened. They took Nir Chefetz, one of the two central witnesses on whom the whole of the fabricated case 4000 is built, and they threatened him, they blackmailed him. They threatened him. We'll destroy your family. We'll take all your assets. Your children will never talk to you again. It's all in the protocols. But they hid this blackmail from the Attorney General and then imposed a gag order on it. Why? What do they have to hide from the public? Did the prosecutor Liad Ben-Ari know it? Did the state prosecutor authorize this? This criminal process of threats in order to get false confessions, we only just stumbled upon this by mistake. They accidentally added a bit of material, otherwise we wouldn't have known about it. You wouldn't have known about it. What else are they hiding from the public about the threats through which they recruited state witnesses and made them make false witness statements? Only yesterday there was another bombshell. We heard that even the second state witness on whom the fabricated case 4000 is built, Momo Filber, even on him they ran a process. It was published that here too there was a criminal attempt to blackmail him, and in this case too, the trick was hidden from us. After all, that's not serious enough. And it's exactly the same strategy that we saw in another contaminated investigation connected to me. A serious police investigator, not just a police investigator, a serious one, threatened a worker in the Prime Minister's office, Svetlana Gordetsky, to bear false witness against me, and if not, she would go to jail. He told her, this is a quote, say that Netanyahu sent you to complain about state witness Meni Naftali, or else you'll end up in Nevet Tirza. You're listening what's going on here? They're threatening a woman who came to complain against state witness Meni Naftali about sexual harassment, and they tell her, if you don't bear false witness against the Prime Minister, you're going to jail? Tonight? I think anyone who hears me now should be shocked. In what kind of democracy, in what kind of state with the rule of law does such things happen? Where does this happen? Where can such a thing happen? I know regimes where it happens, but in what democracies can things like this happen? And I want to ask you another question. What are they doing against this? Nothing. Nothing. And in what democracy does the state prosecutor send emails to serving judges, briefing them how to speak in the media, to speak against the Prime Minister? What else do we not know? What other emails will they send? There are shocking examples of the tendentious investigation and the contamination of the process in my cases. Let me give you a last example. Police investigators took my spokesman's cell phones without a court order, against the law, knowing it's against the law. They just ignore the law. But at the same time, the same police investigators who applied criminal pressure on witnesses to make them testify against me are the same police investigators who deliberately didn't investigate the dozens of members of Knesset who proposed the law to close Yisrael Hayom and supported it. 43 members of Knesset supported the law to close Yisrael Hayom. I want to inform you, 42 of them were never investigated. None of them were even asked a single question about the favorable coverage they received in Yediot Achronot, the favorable coverage that they received in exchange for a government act and attempt to close a newspaper. After all, according to the prosecutors and the legal advisor, what we heard tonight is bribery. That's bribery. They received favorable coverage in exchange for an act that they took. They wouldn't even investigate it, not a single one of them. But why weren't they investigated? No, nothing. The reason is that even in this case, they didn't do anything. That is not serious enforcement. It's arbitrary on steroids. That's called stitching up a case. So I have to tell you, they're stitching a special suit here just for me. This suit, taken off the rack in the shop, but here they've tailored, they've sewn a special suit just for me. First time in history, first time ever. It's the first time ever in the history of democracy, in the history of Israel and around the world, that police investigators and prosecutors investigate the relations between media and politicians, but investigate only one person, me. The state prosecutor also said it's a precedent. He said it's a precedent, but, well, it's the first time, but, you know, precedents have to start somewhere. And where do you start? You know, there is one law for others and one law for Netanyahu. There is not a single person in this country who doesn't know how much negative media my family and I have received, more than any other politician in the country. And it's me that they accuse of positive coverage? It's absurd. It's an injustice that cries up to the heavens. The contaminated investigations against me are rightly eroding the public's faith in the system, and they should concern every citizen. We must put an end to it. The public deserves clean investigations that go after the truth and only the truth. The only way to rehabilitate the public's trust in the system is to form an unbiased external committee to investigate the system and put an end to it. It's time to investigate the investigators. It's time to investigate the prosecutors who authorize these investigations. I respect the state of Israel and the prosecutors, but you have to understand that they are not above the law. The criticism against them is not a threat to the rule of law, it's a condition for the rule of law. In democracy, nobody is above the law. Nobody is exempt from accountability. It's called accountability. Accountability. I want to quote something here from someone else. He said, the action of the prosecutor raises a serious concern that the case has not been examined objectively and that her purpose was to influence my future with acts that passed every possible red line, that didn't reach the cases of bribery and breach of trust. I do not know what a criminal charge is. I didn't say this. The person who said this was Avichai Mandelblit. when it was investigated by the same prosecutor, Shai Nitzan, and now they're doing to me what they did to Mandelblit, but with much greater force. With a much greater force. The Prime Minister, in order to topple a Prime Minister, you need to do more work, to do much harder things. Much bigger things, much more tendentious things. Unfortunately, Mandelblit simply couldn't stand up to the pressure from Shai Nitzan and other prosecutors. He too succumbed to the same system that he had once so seriously challenged. Citizens of Israel, each of you knows the feeling when you've been done a terrible injustice and when you face it almost helpless. What I'm going through is not easy. I'm also a human being. What my family is going through is too difficult to bear. Day, evening, my blood is being spilt, and my wife's blood and my son's blood. And I won't hide it from you. It's hard for me. I also won't hide from you that some people have suggested that I fold, abandon my principles. That's what they told me. But my sense of justice and truth burns within me. I'm not ready to make my peace with the fact that in my country, which I fought for, which I was injured for, which I have struggled for, which I have led to unprecedented achievements, which I've put together with you at such a respectable place on the map of nations, I won't allow our country, our democracy, to have such contaminated investigations, with such arbitrary investigations, with such distortions of justice. I will not allow lies to prevail. I will continue to lead this country according to the law. Exactly as the law says, I'll continue to lead the country with responsibility, with devotion, and out of concern for our security and our future, and for the sake of our country, for the sake of our democracy, for the sake of the rule of law, for the sake of justice, we must do one thing. We must finally investigate the investigators. Thank you.